Okay. So, very good afternoon, one and all. It is my great pleasure to introduce the concept of this particular webinar series, which is taken up by our university and the College of Physiotherapy. So, it is in this webinar series, we have identified the eminent speakers, resource persons from our own alumni who are capable of delivering the good topics, good lectures on various topics in our profession. So in that way, we have just scrutinized all the alumni, and in phase we'll be getting the eminent speakers out of the alumni and delivering the lecture on the topics of their own interest. So on behalf of our university and the College of Physiotherapy, we are very happy to host such kind of an unique webinars. And in fact, in next week, we'll be having an alumni who are settled in abroad, who can share the international knowledge to the people who are studying or working in this country. So like this, we are trying to do the unique kind of an webinar series. The people who are attending this conference, these webinars, especially our own students and the working physiotherapists in this Satara district, and the whole alumni, and all of them will be definitely benefiting this particular webinar series. And now we are in this first phase before our World Physiotherapy Day celebrations. In the month of August, we have planned only 3 lectures. One is by Dr. Vipin Banagade, who is an eminent physiotherapist working in Pune in a renowned hospital. And he is going to deliver a talk on a very talk of the town today, talk of the world today, the COVID-19. And role of physiotherapy in that, in ICU especially. And so this knowledge is going to be useful, and the session will be convened by Dr. Amrut Kaur Raizade, who is our associate professor. So all of you will be definitely benefiting out of this session. And followed by tomorrow, we will be having a lecture by Saili Chitnis. Again, she is going to talk about the NDT. And tomorrow itself, in the afternoon session, we will be having a session by our own alumni, Dr. Praveen Gavali, who will be talking on the topic of neuro-related topic. So this session is going to be useful. All of you take advantage of this and be in touch with your college, and wish you all the best. Over to the convener, Dr. Amrut Kaur, introduction of today's speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your kind information, sir. Am I audible, Dr. Trupti?
Yes, ma'am.
You're audible.
Okay. Yes. Very good afternoon, Dr. Vipin Banugade.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
To inform everyone who is attending this webinar that Dr. Vipin Banugade is working. He has done his Master of Physiotherapy from Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences, deemed to be University Karad, in 2011. He is a member of Indian Association of Physiotherapists and also a Maharashtra OTPT Council. He is currently working with the Sahyadri Hospital as a consultant senior physiotherapist for past 7 years. Previously, he has worked with the Spinology Clinic at Koregaon Park as a consultant physiotherapist for past almost 1 year. He is working as a specialist in physiotherapy, orthopedic treatment, and manual therapy skills. He has vast experience of delivering various health-related seminars in the corporates like ZS Associates, Nihilate Company, Crane Process, TomTom Software Company, Retter Company, SunGuard Financial Software Firm, Tata Docomo, Bund Garden Road, Shivaji Nagar, then Vodafone like Eravda, then Ola cab drivers, Nuance India, EcoRent, ITC, and so on to tell. Briefly, to talk about his content of delivery while he was talking about the health-related issues of those employees was ergonomics and its benefits, poor postures and its corrections, exercises, stretching and strengthening, and do's and don'ts for the spine care. So we feel very happy and privileged to have you, Dr. Vipin, and I request you to carry forward your session.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for the introduction.
Dr. Vipin, now you are the host. You can carry forward.
Okay. Is everything is visible, right? The presentation is visible, right?
No, sir.
You're not able to see the presentation on screen? Yeah, this is the presentation. Yeah. Okay.
Just a minute, sir.
Yes.
Can you restart it, sir? We are
Sorry,
not.
you're not able to see.
Yes.
Now is it visible?
Yes, now it is visible, sir. You can carry
Fine.
forward.
Okay, fine. Okay, good afternoon to all of you. I'm Dr. Vipin. I've been already been introduced, so I'll not again introduce myself, and we'll move forward for today's session. Uh, Only idea for selecting this topic is because, as Sir said, it's one of the talk of the town, and it's the trending topic right now. So specifically, I wanted to get it into the critical care management for ICU because that's what is the most into the isolation part. So we'd like to emphasize on that. So I guess we'll start with the thing. Okay, what all things we are going to see today? What actually is coronavirus? Then we'll be seeing the important markers or investigations that one has to undergo, and importance of PT management in critical care patients. Uh, it's one of the important things, like why it has to be given a more specific importance right now, because that's one of the deadliest virus that has come across in over a century, and which we were not prepared. There are hardly any uh, literature available or any treatment protocols that have been available. So it comes through our experience in day-to-day life, what we are doing with the patients today. So people now will be wondering why there is a Shaniwar Wada appeared right in front on the screen. It's only because Pune right now is one of the leading cities with maximum number of cases per day. I think me and my colleagues, we are seeing 30 to 40 plus isolation patients in the ICU. Apart from that, ward isolation are the different ones. So Pune is right now the leading city with maximum number of cases. So we'll see what exactly it is. Coronavirus, as we have been knowing things about it, but still just a flashback with it. It's also known as novel coronavirus or human virus. It's one of the infectious diseases which belong to severe acute respiratory syndrome, that is coronavirus or SARS virus COVID-2. So it's a nomenclature that it's been given. Now, how it has derived the name, we'll see forward as well. It was first identified in December 2019 in Wuhan, China. As we all know, this is a big thing why it came from there, and it's been spreading all over the world till date, till the last minute as well. And overall cases by today's record is 24,000 million cases across, with 188 countries, and resulting in deaths of over 8 lakh people over the world, which is quite a big number. And as I said, we'll see the nomenclature. It resembles like a crown, which in Latin means crown. So it's been corona is the name given to this virus. First of all, we'll just try to know what is an knot. Now, our key measure, access or analyze how fast an infection is spreading. So average number of people getting infected from one person identifies what is an R naught for a particular virus or a disease. For example, for a flu, it is like 1.5. It's like it will affect max 1 to 2 people you will affect if you have a flu. And for H1N1, it was like round about 3. But for this COVID-19, it's round about 7.5, which means one infected person can infect 5 to 6 people. And again, these 5 to 6 people will keep on infecting another 5 to 6 people over a period of time. So that is what is the main concern today, as there is still a lot of cases every day. Fresh cases have been seen. So this is just a normal drawback, just a normal information about what an R naught means and how the virus spreads. We'll see how the virus is transmitting right now. There are two ways. That is a direct, where it has been transmitted amongst the people, maybe because infected person may be sneezing, coughing, which is causing a droplet spread, and coming in contact with that will definitely other person will be acquiring the disease. Another one is aerosol spread. As the important thing with this virus is it stays in the environment. It doesn't dies of coming out of, or it's not that it's just getting inside the body and staying there. So that is one of the concerning things. And another important thing, indirect contact is also one of the alarming sign as a fomite. Now fomite actually means a surface or an object which has been used by an infected person. As it's been said, the virus can survive on any of these surfaces for approximate 3 hours. So any other person who is coming and using those objects will definitely be acquiring that symptoms if your immunity is quite low. So these are the modes of transmission with direct and indirect. Okay, so what are the symptoms that come across? The mild to many a times people might be asymptomatic as well after acquiring infection. It's not that immediately you will have signs and symptoms. It almost the incubation period is almost 2 to 3 days, and post that the infection, once it sets in, it's approximately there for 12 to 15 days, and it may be longer than that as well, again depending on your immunity. Mild to moderate symptoms maybe like fever, dry cough, tiredness, headache. These are one of the mild symptoms that we come across. So in these days, if you find with any of these symptoms, it's very important and necessary to go and get yourself tested first. That is very essential today. And one of the severe symptoms that come across will be difficulty in breathing, shortness of breath. Will definitely, you will have to report to the hospital and get yourself oxygen support. And chest pain. Chest pain is again one of the alarming signs. So these are the mild to moderate and severe symptoms that can be seen in this COVID cases. Okay, less commons are like pains, sore throat, diarrhea, conjunctivitis, or loss of taste or smell. In few of the cases, the initial symptoms also might be loss of taste or smell, but it's not across everyone. It's only the few people might be reporting they have this symptoms, but quite less common. And the sore throat is one of the again important things. So these are one of the alarming signs if you are in the OPD seeing patients, and if any of the patients is complaining any of these things, make sure you're not taking it casually and seeing the patients. Get the patient tested first. That's very important. Okay, what are the complaints which occurs because of this virus? Now, even if the virus, you be tested positive with a rapid antigen test or the normal nasal or throat swabs. Post that, it's not that the virus is gone, so there is no other complications which it leaves behind. There are serious complications which are being seen, and the most important is pneumonia and acute respiratory distress syndrome. These are one of the initial complications that can be seen. Sepsis, kidney failure or renal failure is one of the again important part. And what recently we have been seeing is that many of the ICU patients landed up with stroke. So on investigation, it has been proved that COVID is again responsible for this kind of complication. Deep vein thrombosis is again very alarming these days. Almost 4 to 5 patients in recent times we have seen developing deep vein thrombosis quite rapidly. So we have to take care about that. And heart failures. So these are the few complications. We'll be seeing few things and how the management is to be done about all these things. Okay. Now, just in short, like which are the organs that have been affected first? Very important to understand is this virus, COVID virus specifically gets attached to the protein of an enzyme called as ACE receptors, ACE2 receptors. Now, these are angiotensin converting enzyme to receptors, which are predominantly found in nose, throat, lungs, brain, blood vessels. So these are the specific areas where it affects the first, and lung has an abundant amount of ACE2 receptors. That is one of the reasons why the pneumonia or the acute respiratory distress syndrome sets in. Now these ACE2 receptors are again, as I said, is found in more in lungs on the epithelial linings. So once the virus uh, enters the body and affecting the lungs, it causes or it hampers the oxygen gases exchange between the alveoli, and this is how the alveoli fails to do their work, and the complications sets in, and further complications will be lung fibrosis or collapse of the lung as well. So this is how it affects the respiratory system, and respiratory system which will be very hazardous for the prognosis. So we have to take care of the lungs, and that's where our part will be a major thing. And as I said, blood vessels, blood clotting is another criteria. We'll be seeing what are the important investigating markers ahead. Brain, as I said, it affects in the stroke and seizures, which are very common these days. And many a times it is making patient reluctant about doing things. Like sometimes the patients are very voluntary, doesn't want to do anything. So we have to make them things done. We have to get them doing it. As I said, we'll be seeing important markers. Now, these are the important markers or the investigations that one person has to go through: X-ray, HRCT, D-dimer, IL-6, CRP, and ferritin. We'll be seeing each of this one by one. In X-rays, you can see a normal X-ray on the number 1 image, where there is a dense thing which is visible. Below will be looking the dark surface, and there is a proper air entry. So and you have to check for the if any other is there any opacity or anything. Usually in pneumonia previous than this, the X-rays will be gradual. There will be a gradual change. But these days with the COVID thing, there is a drastic change. The day one, if you see patients' X-rays, they're really bad. There are hardly any dark surfaces visible on the X-rays. So if you see on the image 2, you will see a lot of opacity or a ground glass appearance kind of thing, which is quite common in this COVID. You will see the arrows indicating that one of the sides where you can see a lot of wires, you see that is a lot of white surface and there is very less of dark, which means the lung is been affected quite well, and which is an alarming sign. So this can lead to lung collapse also. So imagine with already respiration hampered, and there is a lung collapse, what can be anticipated ahead. So this is how the X-ray is one of the important things as a diagnosis, because on the X-ray, on that basis decides whether we have to go for any further test or not. HRCT again gives a clear picture. It is high resolution contrast tomography. If you see the images right from A, B, C, D, the A is the initial stages when the virus sets in, where you can see on the posterior part, there's a slight white appearances. And if you just keep following in image B or C, you will find that on the posterior aspect, that is a below part, there's a lot of white surfaces, white patches rather than the dark ones. And in image D, you can see all that spores kind of thing or a sponge kind of appearance on the HRCT, which gives a clear-cut indication that the patient was infected or might be infected with COVID. So these are a few of these investigation things. What is D-dimer? A D-dimer is a blood investigation which helps to understand any clotting problems. Now the normal ranges for D-dimer is less than 0.5. What we have seen today in ICU or across the cases that are there, the D-dimer goes up to 1 lakh also. So you can see there's a high range, which is not even within the alarming sign, but it's beyond alarming signs. So higher levels indicate that there may be significant blood clots or thrombus that has been forming, or there is a breakdown of this thrombus. Now imagine there is a lot of thrombuses in the bloodstream. You can think what are the possible things. It can be, it can give rise to strokes or heart blocks or any other complications like in legs as well. So this is about D-dimer. Now interleukin-6, that is called as IL-6, very important marker for inflammation. Previous than this COVID, these things were not been routinely checked. Over a period of time, the researchers found that in COVID-19 patients, this D-dimer interleukins have been going on a very higher levels. So this gives a conclusion that in the initial phases, to understand whether the patient has been infected or not. So the normal 6.6 and it can go up to higher levels as well. So this is about 6. Other things might see reactive, which is any of the you will find it has been raised, and ferritin levels as well. Ferritin levels gives us the amount of iron present in the body, in the blood. So this gets into hyperferritinemia. Now drugs. What are the routine drugs that has been used these days? It has been antivirals, which has been done as remdesivir and Faviflu. This is just to understand how the therapies work, and we'll be coming back to our part. And anti-inflammatories, that is steroids, that is Tocli has been definitely used nowadays. Heparin, as I said, D-dimers are quite high, so heparin works quite good. And recently, the plasma therapy has been used in most of the cases, and they're giving some slight results as well. Plasma therapy is taking plasma from a previously infected patient who has developed antibodies, and these are being introduced into critically ill patients to help them develop antibodies faster. Okay. So till now, what we saw is just an overview about the coronavirus and what are the important markers and how it has to be, how it manifests in the body, because this is how our therapies will be important to understand what we are doing or what is essential or what is to be done. So important part of the PT management in critical care area is to promote lung functions, which is very, very important. That is the only way where the critical care physiotherapy works prominently. Now, reducing the incidence of ventilator associated pneumonias. Now, if the patient has already landed on ventilator, that's another thing that we have to do. But before that, if we can try and not make the patient to go into such things, it's in our hand. And we should try our level best to make sure that the patient doesn't land up with this. So we'll also, now, as I said, in spite of the infection might be there for a couple of weeks, but their effects might stay longer. The adverse effects for ICU stay people, what we are finding right now is physical inactivity, which is causing more of weakness. As I said, since all other markers are on higher levels, which is causing a fatigue, a generalized weakness in the patients. So this is where our mobility treatment will definitely work. Diaphragmatic weakness, which is due to prolonged mechanical ventilation. Max of the patients require non-invasive ventilator, that is NIV, max of the time, which can be switched over to the high flow concentration masks as well, or high flow oxygen nasal cannulas. But many times this doesn't work. So we have to take care about that as well. Now, compromised cardiac and respiratory functions. As I said, since there is a less of physical activity and blood levels altered, we have to check for other parameters as well. We have to be very vigilant about what is happening with the saturation, how much is the heart rate, and keep monitoring the respiration as well. And above that, we have to see how much the patient is able to do all the things. Again, I'm emphasizing about deep vein thrombosis is because many of the cases we have been seeing are developing deep vein thrombosis. Almost 4 to 5 of the recent in past 2 days we came across that there has been diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis as well. And adverse effects on ICU stay infection has been known, but I don't think right now there is any other deadly infection than corona, which has been there in the environment and across everywhere. So I think we have to see. So what should be short-term goals in the ICU? It's an early activity. Make the patient mobile. We should make sure that if nothing but at least bed mobility has been started with the patients in ICU. Now, when I say this, see, it's not just one thing. The patient might be on O2 or just NIV. There are a number of infusions going on, and patient himself may not be willing to do anything. So that's where we have to make the patient, tell them the benefits or make them understand how it's going to work and get it done. And mobilize in the sense doesn't make patient walk immediately or anything. As I said, we have to monitor each and every aspect of the vital signs, and then we have to see how much we are able to mobilize the patient. Now, positioning, again, it's very important. We'll be coming about a protocol about positioning later. Manual therapy, percussion may help in patients who have been intubated or undergoing tracheostomy. Other than that, percussion actually is not showing any that good results. Moreover, our breathing exercises and the basic postural drainage things only work. suctioning is required if the patient is being intubated. So that is another thing. And long-term goals is like extensive rehabilitation program. Once the patient has been shifted out of the ICU, till whatever days the patient stays, we try to get into group therapy where in the isolation ward itself, not outside the isolation ward, so that they can actively do the exercises together. So this is like short-term and long-term goals that we can see. Okay, what actually will be do now? Airway clearance is a basic important for airway clearance is like getting the patient into postural drainages and patients on ventilator. Now there will be like two types. As I said, if the patient is intubated or has undergone tracheostomy, it becomes easier to do suctioning. But if the patient is on non-invasive ventilator, it's very difficult. So that's where the breathing exercises and other part plays an important role. With NIV, we can ask them to do the few of those things. And even we are making patients sit with NIV as well. The NIV is attached. But the important thing is, if the patient is on NIV, just check for FiO2 levels. Increase the FiO2 level up to 100 whenever you are changing patient's position. So once you increase the FiO2 levels, the proper ventilation is being provided. And after that, you change the patient either into the side lying or sitting, which is very helpful. So sitting upright will definitely descend the diaphragm and give a lot of space for the oxygen to get in, other proper ventilation. And as I said, this predominantly affects ACE2 inhibitor. So we have to take care about the lung ventilations properly. So chest physiotherapy, as I said, percussions has a limited role, maybe just into the intubated patients. Breathing exercises, for example, deep breathing, diaphragmatic and thoracic expansion plays very important role. About the use of spirometry, we are not that sure because it causes a lot of aerosol spread. We as in me or my colleagues see patients like 3 hours in morning or 3 hours in the evening, but there are other people who are been in the contact, for example, nursing staff and the other ward doctors. So aerosol spread, we have to try and make sure as much as less aerosol spread that can be done for in view of the medical staff, not from the patient point of view. Has been already because all the patients are positive. So we are restricting the use of spirometer and not using much of it. And chest PNF patterns. In this, we are just going more for a moderate manual pressure techniques, not with all kind of PNF patterns, chest PNF patterns. So basically, you just apply the pressure over the areas or the part where you want more of the ventilation to occur. So this is how we are planning with the management in the ICUs and few things. As I said, we'll be discussing about very important is prone ventilation. The best position right now you can do to the patient and improve ventilation is getting the patient into prone. Now you'll see why prone ventilation is very important. It is one of the simple ways which can improve the gases exchange by reducing the dorsal lung pressure over the alveoli, okay, and helps lung perfusions. So once you put patient into the prone lying, what you do is you allow the posterior part, as you have seen in the HRCT, the most affected part in the lung is the posterior part. So we have to take care about that and get the patient into the prone lying. Once the patient into lying, it also mobilizes towards the central airway gravity assisted position. Okay? So you can just see in the diagram there is a supine and prone position. Supine, there is a ventral alveoli and dorsals. So when you put patient into the prone, your dorsal alveoli has an space, or the space is the less pressure to allow lung expansion onto the posterior part as well. Okay, it helps in activating alveolar recruitments when you put the patient in the prone, and it improves the ventilation perfusion ratios as well. So this is very important when you are talking about the positioning in prone and getting the patient. But getting the patient prone is not that simple or not that easy once the patient is on ventilator. You have to take care that without disconnecting the ventilators, slowly and gradually we have to turn the patient. And many times there are infusions which are going throughout the day, say about any of these drugs which I've been told you, has a long times of infusions. So along with that, you have to get the patient in prone is really a difficult task. But the patients who can voluntarily do, we should definitely emphasize them to get into the sidelines on prone lying. The positioning plays a very important role in COVID. This is what we have observed, because moreover, it gives the patient a mobility, a sort of mobility in the bed, because you cannot immediately take patient out of the bed and make them walk. It's one of the difficult tasks and not recommended in critical care. So making them sit, long sittings and other things is very convenient. And this is, as I said, is a prone ventilations. What protocol that we follow right now is a CARP protocol, that is COVID awake repositioning or prone lying protocol. This is called as CARP protocol. Now the aim is to avoid intubation in a normal patients. A COVID patient might look normal or stable, but it can deteriorate any period of over a period of time. So you have to take care about the ventilation as well. So to avoid patient going into intubations and NIV support. This protocol helps. So we have to keep checking of the patient saturation levels as well. Now this is a timed position change protocol that over 2 hours. So as I said, round about one time we go to the ICU, there are 16 patients available. So each and every patient, you have to get into the positions in different ones. So preferably we start like prone lying first. So this 2 hours has been divided into like half an hour each postures. So you start with prone lying for half an hour, change all the patients in the prone lying. It might take a longer time as well. As I said, there are a number of things attached to the patient and it's quite difficult for us to change position quite easily. After that, you ask the patient to get into the left or right side of the lying down positions and then sitting upright. So this is a pattern of positioning which has to be done over a period of 2 hours for each and every patient. They are showing good results with the X-rays. Like, as I said, X-ray is one of the important investigation which helps us to even understand how much the patient is improving or not improving. So just keep on monitoring, because X-rays are being done every day. So that gives us an idea whether the patient is benefiting out of all these things or not. So each position has to be changed for half an hour. Now precaution is to, you have to keep monitoring patient saturation levels. And if the patient is on NIV, as I said, if the patient is on NIV, which means there is the patient requires a lot of ventilatory support. So we have to take care of FiO2, increase the FiO2 to 100 and make them sit, let them be comfortable and then gradually reduce the FiO2. But just don't do it suddenly, just make it gradually. So that is one of the important things that you have to check for this CARP protocol. This, I hope, is one of the new things that you can come across while treating the COVID patients. Now this is the way that we start. Like first we start on prone position to side on the right or side, anyways you do for another half an hour. Make them sit up for another half an hour. So in this way, this I keep on doing as much as possible. Along with this, we have to take care whether the patient had food or no. So according to this, we have to modify the timings and see the patients. So I hope this CARP protocol will be helpful for all of you. Now these are another few positions that we ask the patient to get into. These are the normal postures that we ask the patient to get into an ease of breathing. So like leaning forward and sitting with elbows supported, either on a chair or on a bed also they can do, or you can give us a trolley table just closer to the patient so they can lean on it and sit if they're feeling breathless. Basically these positions we teach more in the wards where they are on to O2 support and not requiring ventilations. So in what we are trying with all these techniques so that the patient knows like what to do if they is feeling short of breath or there is any breathlessness. These are postures that can be attained while being in the bed as well. If you're not able to make the patient sit with legs hanging down, you can give, as I said, a trolley table closer to the patient with the help of pillow. You can ask the patient to lean forwards, and this is lungs to expand and have an ease. Or sitting upright, as I said, sitting upright descends the diaphragm down, so makes available a lot of space for the lung to expand properly. So this is a few of those important things. Now the important thing, this is still they saw what patients are doing and what all things do for a patient. Very important thing over here, which I was waiting for you to know, is that we have been wearing a 3 to 4 layer kit which makes us very difficult for us to breathe in. So imagine seeing 16 or 17 or 30 plus patients throughout the day in that kit is really a challenging task. So what all things that we use in a kit is like not only from care on gown, there are things that we use. This almost makes up 3 to 4 layers over the head, 3 to 4 layers of the dress, and 3 to 4 layers of the shoes. Apart from N95 mask, we use another 3 or 4 or 5 layers of surgical masks with face shield to give a proper protection over the face. So till date, whatever there was only one way that affected patient a lot. And after H1N1, this is one of those things where we have to take the maximum precautions. So this is the way we do the donning of the kit. She is my colleague. Right now, one of my colleagues is in the ICU seeing the patients. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 images will give you an idea of how many layers of kit that we have been wearing before seeing COVID patients. And it is very important for us to maintain our ventilation because you start feeling breathless after half an hour or so. So you have to maintain a good. You should have a good immunity and good breathing capacity as well. So we all should also practice breathing exercises over a regular period of time. And recently we are going to start with the stretching exercises and breathing exercises for all the ward doctors and the consultants as well. So that when they're in the kit, seeing the patients, we are there for 3 hours or 4 hours with the patients, but the other people are like more than 6+ hours. So for them, we are going to start just in a couple of days. We'll be starting with the stretching exercises in PPE kit and breathing exercises as well. So what should help them to sustain and work for a longer hours. So this is my team. Like we all see COVID-19 patients, and it's past 6 to 7 months. Approx 6 months that we have been seeing ward isolations and ICU patients for longer durations. And touch wood, we're using kits properly, so very less chances of our staff getting infected with the virus and working with better way, in a good way. So this is my team that we have been working with. Fine. So I think I'll be concluding with this. And if you have any questions, you can ask. The basic thing is you have to emphasize on breathing as much as active breathing the patient is able to do. All the activities that can be done. The part over here, what we see is the positioning of the patient, as I explained, plays a very vital role, and make sure that the positions are being changed regularly, gradually, and keeping an eye on saturations and the vital signs of the patient. How much we can ambulate or mobilize the patient depends on that. And post that in the wards, as I said, we can get into the group exercises or group therapies. And post that, once the patient is discharged, we ask them to come up for a follow-up after 10 or 15 days and just have a regular routine checkup with us. So this is how we have been doing and working things, at least in my hospital over here, with this kind of kit. So if any questions and anybody would like to ask, please ask.
Thank you, Dr. Vipin. That was really a wonderful session, Dr. Vipin. I appreciate it a lot. It was having lots of pictures, and you are talking out of your experience. That is the most beautiful part of this presentation.
Yeah, because whatever I've been telling, whatever the presentation I gave today is only based on what we have been seeing in day to day. There's hardly anything that has been available over the net or anything, but this is over what we have been doing now.
Yes. And that is the beauty of your presentation, I should say. Actually, we are awaiting to all the participants. I request if anybody has any queries, please post your questions in the chat box. We have 2 more minutes to go. You can further ask your queries, or you can unmute yourself, ask the question. I also request participants to kindly click on the link that is shared, That is a post-test questionnaire. You can fill it. Then only you will be getting e-certificate. Once Dr. Vipin, would you like to comment on something full of
Hello.
experience,
Your voice. Hello.
Hello?
I'm not able.
Am I audible, Dr. Vipin?
Your voice is getting cut in between.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, can you tell me something about respiratory PNF? Like,
Respiratory
is it
PNF.
useful? Yes.
Yeah,
Do you
that's what I
think
said. That's what I said. We are not going with each and every technique of PNF patterns. It's only onto the
Yes.
compression technique that we have been going with the patient.
Yes.
So that has been finding it easier. Like before starting, we just, as I said, we check onto the saturation and we
Yes.
give the compression and ask the patient to do the breathing effectively. Immediately you won't see, but just give the time to the patient. Post that manure, give the time patients to breathe in properly, and you see that there is at least 3 to 4% of saturation improving. Like roundabout, the
Okay.
patient is on 88, or just example I'm giving. If the patient is on 88,
Okay.
we roundabout seeing patients on 92s and 93s. So at least
Okay.
in that short period of time, it gives us a good proper result. Of
And
course,
can
it's
you also enumerate like 1 or 2 research thrust areas? Because we know that COVID-19 has now brought lot many things for researchers. But do you think that physiotherapists can do better in which aspect of physiotherapy?
Yeah, see, as I said, there was one study which has been done under ultrasound guided chest physiotherapy has been done in UK, and but for that you need a regular one constant radiologist to be there inside the ICU, which is quite difficult to find these days to be with us and do that thing. But at least ultrasound guided thing helps us to understand where is a lot of secretions or which part of the lung is getting affected more. Because X-rays and HRCT will give you a vague view. It will not give us specific areas. Okay, HRCT of course, but then HRCT we cannot continuously keep on doing because patient will be exposing many other people in the radiology department as well, and there won't be any separate machine for isolated patients. So HRCT is quite difficult, but the only thing which remains is ultrasound guided, and which has showed some good results, but this is quite difficult, at least for at the present situation in India, to be followed.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Vipin.
Thank you.
We would like to say thank you. Before I conclude this session, I would like to again request all the participants to note that the post-test questionnaire is available in the chat box. It won't be posted in the group because this session was of limited number of people. So I request all the participants who have attended it to fill it. Go to the chat box and click to the link and fill it. Then only you will be receiving an e-certificate. And thank you, Dr. Vipin Bhanugre, once again
Thank you.
for your valuable contribution and valuable time. We would hope to be with you again and again in future also. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yes,
I conclude that today's webinar is over. Thank you.
thank you.